Good evening. I'm Tony Crush. Tonight, we descend into a particularly dark and disturbing case from the digital age. A story that begins with a seemingly innocuous, even cheerful, social media post, but quickly unravels to reveal a gruesome discovery and a chilling betrayal. It's a tale of a young woman's life, vibrant and full of promise, brutally extinguished around a time meant for family, gratitude, and warmth. It's also a stark look at the cold, calculated actions of a killer who believed he could manipulate reality, both online and off, to weave a web of deception around his heinous crime. This is the heartbreaking and infuriating murder of Jasmine Pace. The holiday season of 2022 was meant to be a time of comfort and togetherness for the Pace family in Chattanooga, Tennessee. 22-year-old Jasmine Pace, a bright community college student, had, like many young adults, made plans to spend Thanksgiving with her loving family. However, to her mother, Katrina's initial surprise and slight disappointment, Jasmine sent a text message at the very last minute, abruptly canceling these cherished plans. Shortly thereafter, a new post appeared on Jasmine's Facebook account, a platform usually reserved for sharing genuine moments. It read, "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby," a sweet sentiment on its surface. But the photograph accompanying this seemingly cheerful declaration was immediately off. It was clearly an older picture, one in which Jasmine's distinctive and numerous tattoos on her upper right arm, tattoos that served as a kind of evolving personal timeline of her life, were conspicuously, glaringly missing. This photo, her parents realized with a dawning sense of dread, had to have been taken months, possibly even years, earlier. A mother's natural unease quickly escalated into sheer, unadulterated panic as Jasmine's family, particularly her father Travis Pace, recognized the chilling and sinister implications of this digital charade. This wasn't Jasmine posting. This wasn't her voice, her current image. Someone else was online, actively, and with cold calculation, pretending to be her, curating a false narrative of her well-being. The terrifying truth began to settle in. No one in her family knew where Jasmine truly was. The chain of events leading to this digital deception began on the night before Thanksgiving 2022 Wednesday, November 22nd. Jasmine Pace left her mother's home in Chattanooga at just before 11:30 p.m., driving her familiar white Chevy Equinox. The following day, Thanksgiving Day, Katrina Pace received that perplexing and out-of-character text message from her daughter's phone. The message, ostensibly from Jasmine, stated that she planned to stay at the home of her friend, a young woman named Emma, for the remainder of the week. Jasmine had recently suffered the profound loss of her grandmother to cancer, so her decision to opt out of the large family gathering, while undoubtedly disappointing to her loved ones, didn't immediately trigger overwhelming alarm bells. She had, on occasion in the preceding months, chosen brief periods of solitude and quiet reflection to work through her deep grief. That fragile, understanding acceptance, however, abruptly and irrevocably shattered with the appearance of that bizarre, out-of-place Facebook post. "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby." Katrina was initially struck by the unusually revealing outfit her daughter appeared to be wearing in the photograph, something she felt was quite uncharacteristic for Jasmine to post publicly online. But it was Jasmine's father, Travis, who, with a sickening lurch in his stomach, noticed the glaring, terrifying discrepancy, the complete absence of the extensive tattoos on her upper right arm. This post was not just out of character, it was a fabrication, a cruel and calculated lie. Katrina's subsequent, urgent conversation with Jasmine's friend, Emma, only served to confirm her deepest, darkest fears. Jasmine was not with Emma, nor had she made any plans whatsoever to stay with her for the week, directly and unequivocally contradicting the content of the text message. As the family frantically reached out to Jasmine's wider circle, a disturbing pattern emerged. Several other friends and family members reported receiving similar, vaguely worded messages, all ostensibly from Jasmine, and all consistently stating that the 22-year-old wished to be alone, that she needed her space. Critically and ominously, no one had actually spoken with her directly since she left her mother's house. All communication had been through these increasingly suspicious and unsettling text messages. The family, now consumed by a gnawing, unbearable worry, immediately mobilized and began a desperate search for Jasmine. Her white Chevy SUV was equipped with a GPS tracking feature called My Chevy, which, fortunately, allowed her mother, Katrina, to locate the vehicle. It was found parked, seemingly abandoned, outside the Signal View condominium complex, situated off Mountain Creek Road in Chattanooga. By the time the vehicle was discovered by her distraught parents, it was already 8:39 p.m. On Saturday, November 26th, 4 long, agonizing days after Jasmine had last been physically seen leaving her mother's home late on the night of the 22nd. As far as her bewildered family was aware, Jasmine didn't know anyone who lived at the Signal View condos. When they managed to gain access to the Equinox, they found the driver's seat pushed far back, suggesting that someone much taller than Jasmine's petite 5'2" stature had been the last person behind the wheel. A frantic 911 call was immediately placed to officially report her disappearance. Chattanooga police officers arrived on the scene and took a report from the distraught parents, documenting what they had discovered. However, with Jasmine being a legal adult and no immediate, overt signs of foul play visible at that specific location, the initial police response was, from the family's perspective, frustratingly limited. Undeterred by the perceived lack of urgency from law enforcement, a fiercely determined Katrina Pace contacted their family's cell phone provider. Since Jasmine was still on their family plan, Katrina was granted access to her daughter's detailed phone records. These records chillingly revealed that no outgoing calls had been placed from Jasmine's phone for several days. Armed with the call log, the frantic mother, often with police officers present but taking the lead herself, began systematically calling every single number listed in Jasmine's recent call history. One number, in particular, stood out. Jasmine had been connected with this number for over an hour on the night of November 22nd, the very night she had vanished. When Katrina dialed this number, it connected her to a young man named Jason Chen. Chen was a computer science major at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and, as Katrina would soon learn, he was someone Jasmine had met some months prior on the dating app, Bumble. The two had been dating, though the relationship, from Jasmine's family's perspective, hadn't progressed to the point of formal introductions to her parents. Neither Katrina nor Travis had ever met Jason Chen. When informed by Katrina that Jasmine was officially missing and that her family was gravely concerned, Jason Chen reportedly claimed that he hadn't heard from her for days. He further asserted that their last conversation, on the night of the 22nd, had only been for a few brief minutes, a statement Katrina knew, with absolute certainty from the phone records in her hand, to be a blatant and easily disprovable lie. Chen's apparent lack of genuine concern, his casual dismissal of the situation, served as another deeply unsettling red flag for Jasmine's terrified mother. Katrina pleaded with the officers present to take further, more aggressive investigative steps, but she felt her concerns were largely dismissed. At that point, with limited concrete evidence of a crime having been committed, their official capacity to act was somewhat constrained. Taking matters into their own hands once more, driven by a potent combination of parental love and mounting fear, Katrina and Travis began the arduous task of knocking on every single door at the sprawling Signal View condominium complex where Jasmine's car had been found. Their desperate inquiries yielded no sightings of Jasmine. A security guard at the complex eventually agreed to share surveillance camera footage, which showed Jasmine's white Chevy Equinox entering the parking lot just past 8:30 p.m. on November 23rd, the day after she was last seen alive. The driver of the vehicle, however, could not be clearly identified from this grainy footage. It was then, amidst this whirlwind of desperate searching, that Katrina noticed a final, chilling text message on her own phone. A message that had been sent from Jasmine's phone in the dark. Early morning hours of November 23rd, at precisely 2:18 a.m., the message contained no words, no explanation. Just a pin-dropped location, the apartment situated at 110 Tremont Street in Chattanooga. Her daughter had never sent a cryptic message like this to her before, certainly not in the dead of night. The next day, armed with this new, ominous clue, the desperate parents immediately proceeded to this new location. Again, they undertook the heartbreaking task of knocking on every door in the building. All but one. Apartment 210 either answered or was accounted for by other means. As they made their inquiries, neighbors recounted hearing a loud and unsettling disturbance, possibly an argument or a physical struggle, emanating from the direction of that very unit. Apartment 210 in the early hours of November 23rd, around 2:15 a.m., just moments before the pin drop location was sent. The exact circumstances under which Katrina and Travis gained entry to apartment 210 vary in different accounts, but they eventually found themselves inside. A notebook left near the door revealed the name of its occupant, Jason Chen. It was a small, unassuming, open-concept unit. On the kitchen counter sat a small travel bag. It belonged, unmistakably, to Jasmine. An array of cleaning supplies was conspicuously left out, as if in mid-use. In a desk drawer, Travis Pace made a horrifying discovery: his daughter Jasmine's driver's license, along with her credit cards. He carefully pulled them out and left them sitting in plain view for the police to find. The Chattanooga police were called to the Tremont Street apartment once again. Officers spoke with Katrina, took statements from the neighbors who had heard the disturbance, and then, almost inexplicably, to the increasingly distraught and frustrated parents, they left the scene again, believing that law enforcement was proving to be utterly useless to them in their desperate hour of need. Katrina, driven by a mother's fierce determination, re-entered Jason Chen's apartment multiple times over the next few critical hours. She took notebooks, various electronics, including multiple cell phones, a camera, and an iPad. Anything and everything that she thought might provide even the slightest indication of her beloved daughter's location or fate. The desperate parents also painstakingly searched through the communal dumpsters located outside the apartment building. It was close to midnight, long after their initial discoveries, before the Chattanooga Police Department returned to 110 Tremont Street, this time armed with a judicially authorized search warrant, and formally began to commence their official forensic search of Jason Chen's apartment. The scene that unfolded before the seasoned investigators was grim and deeply disturbing. During their initial meticulous walkthrough, they noted what appeared to be numerous bloodstains on the hardwood floor in the living room area. Blood that had been absorbed into the grouting between the tiles in the bathroom, and more blood on the bedroom carpet. Blood spatter patterns were identified on several doors and on the bathroom wall. The conspicuous abundance of cleaning supplies, noted earlier by Jasmine's parents, was now viewed as extremely concerning by the investigators. Trash bags within the apartment had been recently emptied. A subsequent, more thorough search of the dumpsters outside yielded 2 white sneakers and a pair of blue trousers, all of which were carefully collected as potential evidence. Back inside Jason Chen's unit, crime scene technicians found tiny fragments of broken glass in the living room. The indications of a violent, brutal incident having occurred within those 4 walls were rapidly and horrifyingly accumulating. Furniture within the apartment appeared to have been recently moved around. Distinct marks on the carpet clearly indicated where certain pieces had recently sat for some considerable time and had then been subsequently and perhaps hastily, repositioned to other parts of the room. This rearrangement of the room, investigators surmised, was likely done in a desperate attempt to cover up a large, telltale stain that was eventually spotted underneath the bed. Chillingly, and almost surreally, on top of the bed, as if placed there with some unknown intent, sat a common kitchen knife. In virtually every single room of the small apartment, investigators identified multiple stains that, to their experienced eyes, could very well be blood. The specialized crime scene unit was immediately called in. They meticulously sprayed down various areas of the apartment with Blue Star, a sophisticated forensic chemical agent used to identify and illuminate latent areas where blood may have been cleaned up or might otherwise be invisible to the naked eye. The hallway, investigators later reported, lit up like a gruesome road map, revealing the extent of the bloodshed. The missing person case of Jasmine Pace had now officially, and with heartbreaking certainty, become a homicide investigation. Detectives quickly obtained all available security camera footage from Chen's apartment building and the surrounding area, diligently and painstakingly piecing together a detailed timeline of Jason Chen's movements in the hours and days following Jasmine's arrival at his apartment. They were able to confirm with certainty that Jasmine had indeed arrived at 110 Tremont Street sometime before midnight on November 22nd. Her white Chevy Equinox was clearly captured on video taking a right turn into the building's parking lot. The same Chevy was also captured on camera, leaving the premises the next day, November 23rd, around 8:30 p.m. This vehicle was tracked from Jason's apartment building directly to the Signal View condominium complex. The footage showed a figure, cloaked in a light-colored hoodie, driving Jasmine's SUV from Chen's building towards the Signal View condos, where it was subsequently abandoned. A dark-colored Prius, most likely a hired taxi or a rideshare vehicle, was then observed collecting that same driver from the Signal View condos and dropping them off directly in front of Jason Chen's building on Tremont Street. Ring camera footage obtained from an apartment door situated directly beside an exit door to the parking lot at Chen's building captured Jason Chen himself leaving the building on multiple occasions on November 23rd. This included an exit at 8:27 p.m. Just 3 crucial minutes before the unidentified figure in the light-colored hoodie was seen driving Jasmine's SUV away from his building and ultimately leaving it at the Signal View condos. Jason Chen made several other trips over that fateful Thanksgiving holiday period that particularly piqued the interest of the increasingly suspicious investigators. The first was a solo morning trip to a local Walmart on November 23rd. There, surveillance footage showed him purchasing, amongst other items, Band-Aids, hydrogen peroxide, and a variety of potent cleaning products. Captured clearly on the self-checkout camera, he was observed fraudulently scanning some of the more expensive items he purchased as if they were much cheaper asparagus, perhaps indicating a disturbed, yet still financially cunning, mindset. The overhead Walmart security camera also offered a clear, unobstructed view of the distinctive pair of white sneakers he was wearing that day. Sneakers that investigators strongly believed to be the very same pair later found discarded in the dumpsters outside his apartment building. Later that same evening, Jason Chen stopped at a Walgreens pharmacy and purchased a large package of paper towels. Investigators theorized that sometime between his Walmart trip that morning and the time he eventually left his now blood-stained and hastily, but imperfectly, cleaned apartment, he must have removed Jasmine's body from the building. He also, they believed, discarded his own presumably bloodied clothing as part of his desperate, ongoing attempt to cover his tracks and conceal his horrific crime. His distinctive white hoodie, a bright and easily identifiable article of clothing, proved invaluable to investigators, aiding them in tracking his movements on various, often dark and sometimes fuzzy, surveillance videos throughout Chattanooga. At almost 6 p.m. on November 23rd, the figure in the white hoodie, unequivocally identified as Jason Chen, emerged from his apartment building once more. This time, however, he was visibly struggling, straining to pull a large, heavy, and unwieldy suitcase from the front door of his building across the pavement towards the parking lot. Moments later, Jason's own black Toyota Camry was captured on surveillance footage leaving the premises, the ominous suitcase presumably inside. On November 29th, exactly 1 week after Jasmine Pace was last seen alive leaving her mother's home, Jason Chen was located by law enforcement at his parents' home in Nolensville, Tennessee, a city situated approximately 3 hours away from Chattanooga. Arresting officers immediately noticed visible, fresh lacerations on Jason's right hand and on his feet, injuries that were highly indicative of his involvement in a recent, violent physical struggle. A search warrant was subsequently obtained for his parents' house. In the room that Jason Chen had been using, investigators confiscated a black backpack and a collection of handwritten notes. Some of these notes appeared to be Jason meticulously attempting to get his story straight, to construct a consistent alibi, seemingly in anticipation of his inevitable interview with the police. One note, for instance, stated that he had last seen Jasmine on November 19th and had only spoken to her briefly on the 22nd. He had also written that she allegedly had a history of running away from home, that she had a restraining order against a former ex-boyfriend, and that she had even been homeless at one point, all seemingly calculated attempts to paint Jasmine as an unstable and unpredictable runaway, thereby deflecting suspicion from himself. Inside his backpack, tucked away neatly inside a common glasses case, detectives made another critical discovery: a SIM card. It was the SIM card from Jasmine's cellular phone. Analysis of Jason Chen's own confiscated cell phone yielded further damning evidence. Detectives found a picture of Jasmine Pace standing in his bathroom, a picture that had been taken on the very night of her disappearance. There were also multiple screenshots saved on his device of text message exchanges he had apparently had with Jasmine. However, the actual original text messages themselves were conspicuously missing from his phone, presumably deleted by Chen in another attempt to conceal evidence. Chillingly, and with a callousness that defied belief, on the morning after Jasmine had most likely been brutally killed, Jason Chen had sent a photo to her phone, which he now controlled along with a casually cruel note: "Slept like a baby." Later that same day, he had sent another message to her silent phone: "Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?" The metadata associated with the photo he sent revealed that it was, in fact, an old picture, one taken 2 years prior, another layer of his digital deception. Data recovered from Jasmine's phone, now effectively controlled by Jason Chen, showed that her device had, in fact, accompanied him on his trip to Walmart that morning, even though all surveillance footage clearly showed him driving his car and shopping entirely alone. Finally, and most crucially, the location data from Jasmine's phone, which Jason Chen had kept active, revealed where he had traveled after he was seen struggling with that large, heavy suitcase and loading it into his black Toyota Camry. He had taken a drive out to Suck Creek Road, a remote road that ran parallel to the densely wooded bank of the Tennessee River. On Thursday, December 1st, a team of investigators, meticulously walking along the riverbank in the area indicated by the phone data, spotted an item partially concealed by undergrowth. It was, as they had by then grimly and unfortunately come to expect, Jason Chen's large, dark-colored suitcase. Inside that suitcase, they found the remains of 98-pound Jasmine Pace. Her body was wrapped in 3 layers of trash bags. She had been horrifically shackled with 2 sets of handcuffs. Her right arm was cuffed tightly to her right ankle, and her left ankle was similarly linked to her right elbow, contorting her small frame. These were not standard law enforcement-style handcuffs. They were less substantial, and the chain of one was found to be broken. A subsequent autopsy determined that Jasmine Pace had been savagely stabbed no less than 60 times. Her numerous wounds were primarily centered in one specific area of her body, the upper left side. During the autopsy, the tip of a knife was carefully removed from her chest. Jasmine Pace was remembered by her grieving family and friends as a fun, sweet, and vibrant 22-year-old, affectionately known to all who loved her as Jazzy. She was a devoted aunt to 2 young nieces and a loving godmother to a little boy named Waylon. According to her older sister, Gabby, Jasmine wanted nothing more in life than to one day have children of her own, and often spoke with excitement about the kind of mother she aspired to be. She was also a devoted animal lover and deeply cherished her 4 cats, fiercely protective of her family and friends. Jasmine was remembered as someone who was always there, without hesitation, for a friend in need, always ready to share her boundless love and unwavering support. In December 2022, a judge set Jason Chen's bond at $5 million. As the gruesome and horrific nature of Jasmine's murder reached the news media, many members of the public and legal commentators expressed profound disgust and outrage that Jason Chen was offered any bond at all, given the evidence against him. By this stage of the investigation, a complete and damning timeline had been meticulously pieced together by law enforcement. This included clear evidence that showed Jason Chen had actively used Jasmine's phone and her SIM card after her murder to access her private banking information, to log into her social media accounts, and to post those fake, misleading updates in a cold-blooded attempt to deceive her family, her friends, and the authorities. He had even, with chilling audacity, messaged another woman he had connected with on the dating app Tinder, casually stating, "I guess we're dating now," at a time when Jasmine Pace, his supposed girlfriend, allegedly lay dead, her body possibly still concealed in his bedroom. Later that same night, with Jasmine gone and his gruesome task of concealment apparently completed, he had arranged to play the online video game Call of Duty with his friends, telling them he just needed to finish cleaning up his apartment. When Jason Chen's trial finally commenced, the question on many people's minds was what possible defense, if any, his legal team could realistically put forward in the face of such overwhelming evidence. The answer came on day 1. In a shocking development during opening statements, Chen's defense attorney, Josh Wise, did not attempt to fight for his client's complete innocence regarding the act of killing. Instead, he told the stunned jury, Jason Chen killed Jasmine Pace, but that he didn't do it with premeditation. This is a case of voluntary manslaughter. The state of Tennessee was not pursuing the death penalty in this case, but Jason Chen still faced a mandatory life sentence, likely without the possibility of parole, if he were to be found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. His legal team's best, perhaps only, defense was therefore to argue that a lesser charge, that of voluntary manslaughter, applied. To support this, they posited a theory the couple, they claimed, were drinking wine at his apartment late into the night. When Jasmine went into the kitchen to get another bottle, she supposedly heard the distinct sound of notifications from the Tinder dating app ringing out repeatedly from her boyfriend's phone. Angered by this perceived betrayal, she allegedly began to argue vehemently with him. The defense's claim was that Jasmine then attacked Jason with a broken wine glass. Having previously used a kitchen knife to remove the seal from the wine bottle in the bedroom, he had, according to this narrative, left that knife sitting on his bedside table. It was this knife, the defense argued, that Jason Chen instinctively reached for and used when he was allegedly attacked by Jasmine. Attorney Wise even attempted to explain away the horrifying detail of the shackles found on Jasmine's body by arguing that Jason had panicked after the stabbing and had then applied the handcuffs simply in a desperate, albeit gruesome, attempt to make Jasmine's body fit more easily inside the trash bags and, ultimately, the suitcase. The timeline of the murder and Jason Chen's subsequent, elaborate attempted cover-up was detailed extensively for the jury through a compelling combination of surveillance videos, data extracted from both Jason's and Jasmine's cell phones, as well as powerful testimony from neighbors in Jason Chen's apartment building. One neighbor, Courtney Brewer, reported hearing a significant altercation take place after 2 a.m. on the night of November 22nd, stretching into the early hours of November 23rd. She described being startled from her sleep by a loud, distressed female scream. She checked her phone. It was around 2 a.m. She heard a female voice screaming words she couldn't fully understand, followed by what sounded like chasing. Multiple footsteps moving rapidly across the floor towards the front door of the adjacent apartment. She testified the scream was distressed, not quite angry, emphatic. Recreating a possible, precise scenario for the murder itself became heavily dependent upon the interpretation of the physical evidence left at the crime scene. And this, the defense argued, is where the case became messy and potentially compromised. Not only had Jason Chen admittedly used various types of potent cleaning agents inside his apartment and disposed of many critical items, including the now broken murder knife, but the crime scene itself, apartment 210, had also been accessed and searched by Jasmine's mother, Katrina Pace, now Katrina Bean, multiple times before the official police search warrant was executed. This fact led to significant questions being raised by the defense during the trial about the potential for contamination of the crime scene. The defense called its own crime scene expert to walk the jury through the many changes that were visible at the scene between the first time police were initially called out when Jasmine's parents were there and the point in time that the apartment was officially photographed and processed by forensic teams. Furniture had indeed been moved. Items, as Katrina herself admitted, had been taken by her from the apartment. The defense even questioned whether some evidence could have been inadvertently, or even intentionally, planted. Jasmine's father, Travis Pace, testified that he did not recall seeing a knife on the bed when he first entered the apartment with his ex-wife in their search for his daughter, further muddying the waters around that particular piece of evidence. However, if the integrity of the crime scene itself was considered suspect by the defense, the objective conclusions reached by the highly experienced medical examiner were not easily dismissed, and they pointed directly and unequivocally towards a premeditated, brutal attack. Dr. Stephen Cogswell, the Hamilton County medical examiner, concluded that based on the specific location and nature of the approximately 60 stab wounds on Jasmine's body, she had most likely been in a defensive fetal position while she was being attacked. This finding strongly suggested that the shackles she was found wearing had therefore, in all probability, been applied while she was still alive and conscious, rendering her largely defenseless. If someone were stabbing a person 60 times, the prosecution argued, we would expect them to try to get away. But what if they can't? What if they can't because their right hand is chained to their right leg, their left leg chained to their right elbow? Makes it difficult to run, makes it difficult to do anything. Dr. Cogswell also found no evidence of alcohol consumption by Jasmine upon her death, directly contradicting Jason Chen's defense claim that the couple had been drinking wine together for hours prior to the alleged altercation. Furthermore, the supposed provocation that Chen's defense had pointed to, in order to make the murder fit the legal definition of voluntary manslaughter, those alleged Tinder notifications which apparently angered Jasmine, was also proven to be a lie. When forensic experts from the state examined the data from Chen's Tinder app, they found that he had not received a single Tinder notification to his phone on that entire day. Jason Chen ultimately chose not to testify in his own defense. The presentation of evidence in the trial lasted for 6 intense days. In their closing arguments, Chen's legal team essentially abandoned their earlier, specific attempts to support his original story of provocation and heat of passion. Instead, they shifted focus, pointing primarily to a purported lack of clear ligature marks on Jasmine's wrists, which, they argued, would likely have been present if she had been alive and struggling when the handcuffs were applied. Their own crime scene expert had attempted to introduce doubt about whether Jasmine had been cuffed while alive by pointing to what he suggested could have been a bloody handprint on the bed sheets. Under rigorous cross-examination, however, this expert had to concede that he couldn't be certain of what the transfer stain actually was. It had, crucially, never been forensically tested. Explanations from the defense to effectively counter the rest of the state's substantial body of evidence were largely not forthcoming. In addition to the damning evidence of the shackles, the prosecution argued that the sheer number of stab wounds inflicted upon Jasmine, approximately 60, clearly indicated that there was ample time during the prolonged attack for Jason Chen to have contemplated his actions, to have stopped, and to have ended the assault. Prosecutor Cody Wamp powerfully concluded his closing argument by recounting the critical timeline, specifically referencing neighbor Courtney Brewer's recollection of hearing people running towards the apartment door at exactly 2:11 UCM, just 7 minutes before Jasmine's phone sent that desperate pin drop location to her mother at 2:18 a.m. She screamed, Wamp told the jury. Things happened. She was able to know she was in enough danger that she needed to send her mother her location. It wasn't fast. It wasn't fast at all. And we know that. She knew she was in trouble. She tried to get out of the door. And Courtney told you that she heard a door slam. Jasmine knew she was in trouble. She had time to use her phone before he started killing her. The jurors began their deliberations at approximately 4:15 p.m. Following the emotionally charged closing arguments, they returned with a verdict with remarkable speed. Just after 5 p.m., the foreman announced, with respect to count 1 of presentment 315228, we, the jury, find the defendant, Jason Chen, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. A juror later revealed to the media that the issue of Jasmine's family members having entered the crime scene repeatedly before it was secured by police had little impact on the jury's final decision. The juror stated, every single person who went into that room or that apartment had a part in contamination. But it kind of didn't matter on our deliberations because we already knew what was admitted, that he had murdered her. During the subsequent sentencing phase of the trial, the jurors were faced with the weighty decision of whether Jason Chen should ever be given an opportunity to seek parole at some point in his life. Through a translator, Jason Chen's mother made an emotional, heartfelt plea to the jury for leniency. He is a very good child, she insisted. He is not a bad person. I pray that the judge and jury will give him a chance so that he can go home and restart his life. Defense attorney Josh Wise also asked the jury to offer his client the hope of redemption, stating that the justice system is not only a measure of how society treats its most virtuous and innocent members, but also a profound reflection of how it treats its most condemned. By allowing Jason the possibility of parole, Wise argued, we affirm our society's belief that the most condemned among us can strive to rebuild their humanity. You are tasked with ensuring justice, a justice tempered with mercy, not because Jason deserves it, but because it's a reflection of our humanity as a whole. He asked that Jason be given the opportunity, perhaps as a 73-year-old man after 5 decades behind bars, to seek his redemption. The jury, however, returned with their sentencing decision in under an hour. They unanimously found that statutory aggravating circumstances existed beyond a reasonable doubt, specifically that the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and that it involved torture or serious physical abuse beyond that necessary to produce death. Consequently, they unanimously agreed that Jason Chen's sentence shall be life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the trial, it was also revealed that Jasmine Pace's family had filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Jason Chen's parents, accusing them of harboring Jason and providing him with money and information in the days immediately following the murder, when he was already the prime suspect and Jasmine's family was desperately searching for their missing daughter. The profound loss of Jasmine and the subsequent, grueling legal proceedings clearly took an immense toll on the Pace family. Travis Pace, Jasmine's father, testified during the trial, called as a witness by the defense that his relationship with Katrina, Jasmine's mother, had become difficult. When he took the stand, many of Jasmine's family members reportedly walked out of the courtroom in a display of their fractured unity and pain. Nonetheless, with the life sentence delivered, much of the family's agonizing ordeal was finally over. They had received the justice they so desperately sought against the man they unequivocally called a monster. A man whose crime was aptly described by prosecutors as heinous, atrocious, and cruel. This case is a horrifying testament to a young life stolen with brutal premeditation, and the chilling, almost sociopathic deception employed by her killer in a futile and ultimately failed attempt to escape justice. I'm Tony Crush. Thank you for joining me.